Welcome to the Sticky Note Marketing Show. I'm your host, Mary Zarnecki. Business leaders today are overwhelmed with a unique set of challenges, from rapidly changing markets to digital disruptions, leaving many uncertain about where to focus their efforts to grow their brands and their businesses. This uncertainty can lead to missed opportunities, wasted resources, and stagnant growth. But it doesn't have to be this way. On this show, I provide clear, actionable strategies and bring in guest experts that cut through the noise and deliver consistent results. I share what works and what doesn't when it comes to effective marketing and growing your business. Tune in to discover the latest insights and proven tactics to make your marketing more profitable, lead your teams with confidence, and achieve success for your brand, business, and personal aspirations. If you've ever wondered if it's possible to skip the overwhelm and map out a plan for success on a simple sticky note, I'm here to tell you that it is. So grab that pen and those sticky notes and let's get started. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Sticky Note Marketing Show. I am your host, Mary Zarnecki, and today I am so excited to introduce you to our guest expert of the day, Lily Garrett. So Lily is a seasoned marketing strategist. So if you are an early stage startup, if you are a founder, if you are trying to fundraise for your business, this is the episode for you. Because after founding her first business at 19 years old, Lily has gained invaluable experience. And now she actually takes that experience and shares it with startups and founders. And she specializes in identifying those foundational issues, those kind of issues that can make or break that success in the first few years of business. And so having that robust marketing framework, I hope you get your sticky note out because this is how we're going to help you build that today. So Lily, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Mary.
I know that there are some folks here who are familiar with you, know you well, but there may be people who are meeting you for the first time. So for those folks, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you ended up where you are today?
Yeah, of course. So as you said, I started my first business when I was 19 and learned a lot of what I know about marketing through just a total baptism of fire. That's the only way I can describe it. And forged a path from there as the first marketing hire at multiple early stage startups and really getting in on that ground floor level of new companies. My passion just lies 100% in taking a founder's idea and making it something marketable, because I know how tricky that was for me starting my own business so young. And yeah, that's really where I have the most fun.
Amazing. I know folks are going to be writing furiously. So hopefully if you're listening or watching this, you've got that Sharpie and those sticky notes ready. So I know one of the questions I hear a lot from folks that I work with is, you know what, Mary, I don't have the biggest budget, but I have these really big dreams. So how can founders or startups, the small businesses that you work with, how do you help them leverage limited budgets to create really impactful marketing?
I think that in today's day and age, there are so many options of how to do marketing with a limited budget. Back in the olden days, the only way to do marketing was these big adverts, whether that was TV, billboards, etc. And now there's just so many other avenues. Obviously, it really depends what kind of business you have. That will influence what kind of tactics you use. But I've worked with companies who literally have zero budget and have been able to get their first customers through the door, no problem. So it could be anything from, I think you always start with understanding your audience 100% and then tailoring it to that. For instance, I worked with a cybersecurity company who, when they started out, they just posted everything on Reddit and it went viral. And that's how they got their first customers. I'm working with another company at the moment who has little to no budget for kind of big paid ad marketing campaigns, and they just spend £80 a month on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and they have an intern and they're bringing in customers every week. So I think that it just totally depends where your audience hangs out and what your offer is. But as long as you have a strong offer and strong foundations and strong kind of audience understanding, the sky really is the limit with technology. It's just, you really can do anything with a very limited budget.
And I think you make a really good point there, is that it's about the audience, right? Where is the audience hanging out? And honestly, I see that as a trap for the brands that have bigger budgets, right? I've worked with teams like 3M and Mattel, and sometimes it's all relative, right? So I've talked to some brand managers, not necessarily at those companies, but who refer to their tiny marketing budgets when it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right? So it's all relative. But I think you make a really good point that it's about the audience, right? And you could have, with too big a budget, the temptation to spread it too far and actually be investing in things that aren't relevant to the audience.
Exactly. And I've definitely seen that happening as well with companies that have big budgets and they just do the kind of spray and pray method. And yeah, they just end up putting so much money down the drain. Whereas when you are a company that has a little budget, it forces you to be super specific, really niche down and speak to that one person. And I think that usually produces much more effective marketing and kind of shapes the marketing function to hopefully then always have that ethos moving forward. So yeah, it can be a kind of blessing in disguise to not have a budget.
Yeah, I love the example you shared of the cybersecurity and just Reddit, just connecting because they know that their people are there. And if it works organically, it's probably going to work if you pour advertising budget on it.
Exactly. They bootstrapped to, I think they're hitting 26 million ARR this year, just from Reddit.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it really happen from anything. If you have a good product, you understand your audience and it's something they really want, the sky is the limit.
Amazing. So let's take it back to the whole beginning of the journey, right? So if we've got some folks watching or listening that are either relaunching something or starting something new, or maybe they've started and they're wondering if they did it right, what would you say every founder should do when they are either launching or starting, right? Every founder should do before they actually even start that business.
Yeah, I think that something that I've seen founders get wrong, and these are founders that might have raised millions in seed funding, is that they haven't even necessarily validated their idea 100%, which seems crazy, but it really does happen. And I think when you're talking companies on a smaller scale that might not be going after venture capital, then it's even more likely that you might have missed the mark in the validation process. So I think that's something that if you feel like something's off or you're not making the growth that you thought you were going to have, really just go back and be brutal with yourself. Be really honest. Is this something that people want? And I think one of the best recommendations I can make for those people is read the Mom Test. It's a classic book about audience research. And just to synopsize it, it's basically if you take, let's say you're going to do an ice cream shop, an ice cream flavor, and you have an ice cream flavor and it's chili flavor, and you think it's the best thing, and you're like, no one else has chili flavored ice cream. What a unique idea. And you take it to your mum and you say, Mum, don't you think this is a great idea? And she's obviously going to say, yes, darling. Oh, I'm so proud of you. What a great idea. But in reality, that's not truthful feedback because she wants to be kind to you. She's scared of being mean. She wants to support you. And I think this can happen on larger scales with other people that we're trying to validate it through, whether that's friends, colleagues, etc. And it teaches you basically a way of asking questions that gets the honesty out of people. So that would be my first kind of point of call there. And then after you really do think that you validated it properly, then just to touch on marketing foundations, when I work with companies again and they want to get off on the right foot, it's just really making sure that you're properly doing your audience research, your messaging, your positioning. All of those things are the most important aspects of your business in those early stages. And if you get those wrong, you're going to see it. So yeah, so those would probably be the things off the top of my head that I would recommend.
No, I think that's fantastic. And the book you mentioned, because we'll include the link to it, is the Mom Test.
Yes.
Amazing.
Sorry, what did I say? Did I say the mum test?
No, that's totally fine. I just wanted to make sure it was right. Because you've got folks from all
That's
over the world. All right. So we'll make sure if you guys want to read that book, I think that sounds like a great recommendation. So we'll make sure we include the link. But it's true. There's a big difference. When I was at Johnson and coming up through brand management, some of my favorite managers and mentors reminded me how important it was to partner with the market research and the insights team. Because so often I found that marketers and especially our creative partners be like the research. But if we actually get that voice of the customer and we listen to it instead of just having it validate our own assumptions, right? You said don't fall in love with your product so much so that you don't listen to your audience, because they're the ones who ultimately are going to be making the decision.
Exactly. And everyone's guilty of a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's good. Yeah, just look at the data, qualitative, quantitative, whatever you can get your hands on. Yeah, just keep looking at that and don't get offended.
Don't get offended. Yeah. We all have to be, as founders, you have to be slightly insane, right? You have to be slightly crazy about your product, but yeah, at least have someone on your team, if not yourself, that can bring it back to the data. I love that. So for someone who's moving past that, they've validated, maybe they're bootstrapping or they've got funding, they're off and running. What would you say is a game-changing growth tactic these days? Something that you're seeing really work for small business owners? How should a founder or a business owner prioritize that?
I think that a growth changing tactic is going to really depend on the kind of business that you have and the kind of audience that you have. However, I have maybe two things that I would mention. So I use this kind of framework actually that I have stolen from an incredible B2B marketer called Emily Kramer, where she talks through all of the marketing advantages that companies have. Usually it will be something like the founders have a compelling story that aligns with kind of the audience's story, or it might be that you have a community that's already built in. Maybe you have a partner network that's already built in. There's usually something on this list that companies have. It's very unusual that a company will be founded and they don't have anything on this list. So I think one of the things is figuring out what your marketing advantages and doubling down on that, because often companies don't even know what that is and they're spreading themselves too thin. There's usually one or two things that you should be focused on. And yeah, doubling down on those things is really where you're going to see growth, especially if you're in the early stage. The other two things that I'll mention is in terms of content, what I've been seeing working a lot recently, and this is just off the top of my head, obviously there's so many different things that are working, but for D2C brands, I've just been seeing so much growth through anything UCG. So user generated content. I think short form videos, reels, etc. is just, they're so powerful. They can be repurposed. They also obviously attract top of funnel. They're good for, yeah, all phases of the funnel, really. It's education, it's top of funnel, it's bottom of funnels conversion. Yeah, so I think that's super useful. And I've been seeing some great growth from that. And then for B2B audiences, I've been seeing a lot of growth come through resources. Again, content-wise, 5 years ago, it was just everyone was making blogs. Now it's so templates, guides, cheat sheets, all of that good stuff. I'm just seeing so much more. It's everything from authority building to conversion to top of funnel. Again, as I said, just these pieces of content that are evergreen that really just take the customer from awareness all the way through. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. And you were talking about templates for the B2B, and it's so true. I've been hearing a lot of that recently too from some of the folks that I work with or students in my workshops, where it's fascinating because a couple of them shared that they were giving away their good stuff, right? The stuff that they normally had reserved for clients. And that was the thing that was actually generating the most leads for their business. Is they'd give away the formula, or they'd give away the steps or the framework that they usually worked through in their consulting business. And clients would just come to them saying, you know what, I tried that on our own. That was so complicated. We want you.
Yes.
So that's a really great point. So you mentioned something too I thought was really interesting, was the user-generated content. Now, I know for some brands and startups that can feel a little bit scary. So when you work with brands that maybe are a little resistant to it or they're nervous about bringing that into their marketing mix, is there any advice that you have for those who may have not used that yet?
Yeah, I think with any company that's ever reluctant to try a new marketing strategy, it's to experiment with a small group of people, see if you like the reaction, see if it picks up. And I think that's what marketing is all about, right? You can't find those step change growth drivers without experimentation. It's such an integral part. of marketing. And I think, yeah, you could, for instance, with UCG content, I would suggest taking, if you have customers and you have a few customers, you probably know who your most valuable customers are, the ones that love you the most, your superhero customers. Take those people, ask them if they would be interested in doing UCG content and go from there. Just ask a couple of people. But I've done it with companies before where we've run competitions, for instance. That's always a great way to do it. There's so many different ways to, get that content at a really low or no cost. And it can have, a massive impact. I think now more than ever, with so many brands, with the market being so saturated in so many different areas, those real human experiences and reviews and social proof is more important than ever. And it's one of the most compelling things you can do as a marketer.
It's such a great point, right? Making that actual human connection.
Yeah.
Amazing. When it comes to developing those marketing strategies, so you mentioned a couple of key things to think about, but as they're mapping out their plan longer term, is there anything that you would encourage founders or startups, small businesses to think about as they're laying out their longer term marketing strategy?
I think when I work with companies on those longer term things, it's obviously one of the main things that we're always discussing is hiring and the hiring roadmap. I don't think that there's anything more important than that, really, maybe other than the marketing foundations. Again, I'll recommend another book, which is called No Rules Rule, which is by one of the founders of Netflix and their HR head. And it's just a really interesting perspective on how to hire and how to make hiring decisions. And I think although it's a little extreme in some areas, and maybe I don't back it 100% in everything, I think it's a really good way to shift your mindset about how to attract the best talent, how to retain them, and how to push people to be the best versions of themselves within your team. So that's definitely something that I talk to founders a lot about, is about how to create that culture in the marketing team and in the wider company. And also, all of kind of the hiring practices and how the marketing department should be set up. But apart from that, it would also be, as I mentioned earlier, revisit those foundations. Like even though we've done the personas and we've done the positioning and we've done the competitor analysis, it doesn't just stop there. You really need to revisit things, I would say, every 6 to 12 months. And not saying that you have to do them all from the ground up again, but definitely review, definitely go over and have full kind of company transparency on those. Make sure all departments are totally aware and up to date on them as well, because your audience should always be at the very core of everything that you do.
I think that's such a good reminder. And it's interesting. There's an article that was put out by visualcapitalist.com, and they looked at different generational groups pre and post pandemic and looked at different consumption habits on different channels and how they either increased or decreased. And it was fascinating to me, but it's a great reminder of exactly what you just recommended, which is it's not maybe going to change every year, but you never know unless you ask, right? So for your audiences, it's worth putting into place a check-in to make sure that we're still looking at their real reality, that we're not making this.
Yeah, exactly. And also looking for where you can get a new wedge into the market or expand that audience and go from there. It's just also about looking for new growth opportunities.
Amazing. Now, you mentioned the people part, right? So making sure you have the right people in the organizations, establishing a culture, thinking about, okay, if we're going to go in this new direction or we're going to pursue this new marketing strategy, we might need a specialist, right? You might need new people. So as someone who has been one of the first employees brought into some of the startups that you've worked with, do you have any example stories or examples of when you've seen this done really well or when you've seen this maybe not done so well?
Oh, yes. I think sometimes people want to do, founders, I find, sometimes want to do absolutely everything in-house. And I don't think that's always the best thing to do. I think that in some instances, outsourcing, as I say, everything is different for every company. I don't believe that there is one marketing playbook that everyone can use. Everything's totally different. But I've definitely seen, for instance, maybe founders want to do SEO in-house, and there's an incredible SEO agency which is going to be the same cost as somebody's salary, but they have a team of 10 people who have garnered incredible results for other brands. Then maybe that would be the right fit for us instead of having someone in-house. Or the same with maybe paid ads. It just totally depends on the stage of the company and exactly the outcomes that you want. But I've seen mistakes being made where they think that they can hire one person to do the job of an entire agency. So that's definitely something that I've seen. And also hiring, this is such a classic and it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, but hiring for skills instead of attitude. I think attitude should always trump skills. Obviously, we want both, but I've personally made some really amazing hires at companies for people that might have been a little underqualified, but they're still there 3 years later, winning all the awards and doing amazingly because they had that fire in the belly. And I think especially in early stage startups, you need people to be scrappy. You need people to be optimistic. You need people to want to jump into everything. You need people with a lot of energy. And yeah, so that's definitely another thing that I always look for.
That's a great reminder. And I'm hoping someone put that on their sticky note because I hear this from my husband who owns a restaurant here in Oregon wine country all the time, that it's a destination restaurant. It's fine dining. You have to have a certain level of presentation. And some of the people who have thrived the most, who have done the best in his space, are people who've never had hospitality experience, but they had, like you said, the fire in the belly. They knew service innately almost. And then the skills can be taught, right? So I think that's a great reminder. Lily, thank you so much for joining us today on the Sticky Note Marketing Show. For any of our founders, business owners listening today, any parting thoughts that you'd leave them with?
It's all about prioritization. It's all about focus and prioritization. Like that is the only thing that really matters when you're starting a business, when you're in those early stages. So yeah, just keep on trying your best to focus.
Amazing. And if they might need help with that, I know that's something that you help a lot of your clients with. What's the best way for someone to connect with you, follow up with you after today?
You can reach out to me on my LinkedIn, which is Lily Garrett, 2 L's in Lily, or my email address is lily@maxiamarketing.com. And that's my website as well, so you can reach me there too.
Fantastic. So we'll be including the link to Maxia, Lily's email, as well as LinkedIn, wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast show. So thank you, Lily, so much. I hope you had a fun time enjoying your time on the Sticky Note Marketing Show. I know I have a very full sticky note full of tips and information. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Mary. Thank you.
Absolutely. And for everyone else listening and watching, we will see you on the next episode of the Sticky Note Marketing Show. As always, feel free to leave a comment wherever you're listening or watching with what you want to learn about next so that we can bring the guest expert of your choice to the show in a next episode. See you on the next one. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Sticky Note Marketing Show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who might benefit. Until next time, keep it simple and stay focused.